All right, everybody, welcome to a special edition of our Campus to Canton how-to. Jerrick is with me, the mastermind behind all of our truly amazing apps that we have. And we're going to be introducing a brand new one. And he's been playing with college coaching tendencies and statistics, basically, and has set up, I think, truly revolutionary stuff for us to use to continue to learn and understand what's going on in college football from a statistical angle. So, Jerrick, welcome to. Well, it's not my show or anything. Welcome to the stream here. Walk us through what you've done here. This is truly incredible. And where are you getting this data from? And what made you think about doing coaches, I guess, instead of players? Because we have a lot of player apps.
Yep. So this is the coach metric app I created. The data is coming from, you can see in the bottom right of the graph there, college football faster, or through collegefootballdata.com, which basically scrapes ESPN's play-by-play data in order to make it digestible for us people who aren't good at that. And so it take that data, and having the play-by-play data, you're able to filter by different situations within games. So in this tab specifically, we can look at a coach and how they called plays when the game was still within reach, or they're only winning by a little bit. So it'll show what a coach really wants to do instead of what they're forced to do when they're down by a ton and they have to pass it all the time, or they're winning by a ton and they just want to run the clock out. So this will filter those situations out and show you, in a neutral situation, what does the coach actually want to do.
Yeah, and we've seen this. I mean, if you're on fantasy football Twitter and stuff like that, you've definitely seen this type of graph with NFL teams. I have never seen it with college teams. A lot of people use this for DFS purposes to try to see about, exactly what you said. What do these teams want to do when they can control the game, rather than, trying to jump on a big blow up spot the week before, but it was because they were really being blown out. And not what this team wants to do. It's no surprise here. So we've got this set up 2018 to 2020, and we want to do these videos so that you can go in, play with the app yourself, and learn and answer the questions that you want to ask, not necessarily just the questions that we're asking. And we've got this set up 2018 to 2020. That's the time frame. We've selected just the SEC, but of course you can do all the FBS conferences. And we've selected all the coaches in the SEC, but you could plot a single coach versus another if you want. And these are the coaches, not the teams. So it's no surprise that Mike Leach is laughably head and shoulders above in neutral situation pass rate. And this is obviously taking into account his time at Washington State.
Yeah.
I guess. Or, I mean, he was out of coaching for a year or two. So, but it's Mike Leach wherever he maybe was. Dan Mullen, I think, has been at Florida through this whole time. But any of these coaches, it would be taking into account where they were maybe before the current team. Is that right, Jerrick?
Yep. And the graphic on there is just the current team. But yeah, it
obviously we have Joe Moorhead, who was at Mississippi State, and we have Mike Leach, who's currently at Mississippi State. So they weren't both coaching at the same time. So it's
different philosophies there. You can see.
Yeah, they went to 180 degrees down in Starkville. So that's what this is showing you. Obviously, if you flip it, it's their neutral situation run rate. So Mark Stoops loves running the ball over at Kentucky when he can, and we know it's because they've had Terry Wilson at quarterback. So he's and then before that they had Lynn Bowden. They basically had a converted athlete playing quarterback for the last 2 or 3 years. They haven't had a traditional quarterback at all, like not even a dual threat. I'd say they've basically had Lynn Bowden was literally a receiver converted to quarterback for half a season. So, this paints that picture as well. Let's skip to this tab, Jerrick, team neutral situation. And this is by team, not by coach.
Yep.
but it's basically the same thing. Any details
Exactly.
you want to point out here?
Yeah, no, it's just if you want to look at it team specific wise instead of coach. It was really easy to make when I already had the coaching tab made, so figured I might as well do it.
Yeah, and again, when you're answering questions for yourself, you can mess around with the teams going or the years going back to 2014 and stuff like that. We can see here Mississippi State
Yeah, I was just going to point that out. Yeah.
last year is pulling us way ahead. We know Joe Moorhead we just saw was back here. So when you average all those years together, they're behind some of these other teams. But if we said just look at 2020 alone, Mississippi State again is going to be head and shoulders. So keep in mind the time frame you're looking at when you're doing these graphs and all that kind of stuff. But this is something you can learn. I will be using this for DFS purposes when the season comes around. You can also use this, in my opinion, to pick teams that are going to be passing a lot or whatever you may want to do when you're selecting your C2C guys. How do you want to apply this, Jerrick? How are you going to use it?
Pretty much just like that. And C2C or college, if I'm looking at receivers, which team's going to be passing the most. It's a little bit different for quarterbacks because they can also have the rushing upside, but for receivers, it's nice to see which players will have the potential for volume. Kentucky probably isn't gonna get there.
They did bring in a new OC, but yeah, I mean, Mark Stoops seems
Mhm.
like that's what he wants to do. One thing that's interesting is so Matt Luke, where's Lane Kiffin?
Down,
Lane.
down, down.
So this is really interesting because last year, right, we thought Ole Miss was a fantasy smorgasbord, and it was, and their defense was atrocious. And they were just, I mean, Corral was throwing the ball over the yard. Eli Moore, we know you and me both have a love of Eli Moore. But Lane Kiffin doesn't seem like he wants to do that potentially all the time. And we can see here Lane Kiffin over the last 3 years, he's actually at the bottom of pass rate. So I wonder if like this illustrates that if he can get his defense a little bit in order and potentially control games a little bit more, Lane Kiffin does not necessarily want to go crazy on offense in the way that he did in 2020. So I think that's one thing you can uncover some some more to the story and things like that. Looking back a couple years and coaching tendencies, which I love that you've done this because we can use it in so many ways.
And then one other thing, you can also filter by weeks. So if you want to exclude
Ooh,
playoffs for whatever reason, if you only want to look at first and second down, you can do that.
oh, that's nice.
Um,
Yeah,
and then if you want to look
who's grinding guys into the dirt on first and second down?
right, and then I guess if you want to look at all plays, you can put the win probability filter down to 0 and
Okay.
see what they do in all situations.
Oh, so you can tweak this. So it's defaulted to 0.2. So is that
Yep.
considered a neutral?
Yeah, I think that's a generally accepted.
Okay. And
Point
then
two,
obviously
point
if you
eight.
go up to 0.3, it's going to be the team is leading and expected to win. And if you go down to 0.1 or 0, it means the team is losing, I would imagine, and not expected to win.
Well, not
Is that kind of how
necessarily.
that works?
It filters the tail 20% off of each side. So if they're winning by a ton or losing by a ton, that will get filtered off. If the win probability, so if you look at the title of the graph, and you go to the right to the subtitle,
Oh,
I guess, and the
here we
win
go.
probability, it'll show you the win probability will be between 0.2 and 0.8.
So if we go up to 0.3, it's 0.3 to 0.7.
Yeah.
So this is even more neutral.
Yes, yes,
Okay.
but it's generally accepted that
Okay.
0.2 to 0.8 is cuts off the garbage time.
Okay. The garbage time. Gotcha. Yeah. Okay. And if you want to be more conservative, though, you could go to 0.3 and say, I want to know when it's real close or something for
Yeah,
whatever reason.
yeah,
Okay. Great. So let's go into the coaching plot. And this is where these graphs are a little more recent, but the coaching plot was where this idea was born. And you showed us in our, the inner circle Slack that we have, we're the incubator, if you will, where we're always tossing around new ideas. You showed this to us, and let's take him off. That's going to want to spoil the surprise. And you came up with the first thing you did was show us like, hey guys, look what I did. Offensive
Yep, pass
pass
EPA per play.
per play and rush EPA, or is it? It's pass EPA and rush EPA.
Yeah, pass EPA.
And then rush EPA. And you showed us and said, "Hey, look at the teams that are good at rushing versus good at passing." And EPA, if you're listening and not super familiar with it, it's expected points added, which at the end of each play, depending on down and distance, it's after you ran the play. Essentially, are you closer to scoring or worse off from scoring, after that play? So the passing EPA obviously saying every time you pass the ball, are you getting closer to scoring or further away? Same with rushing. So it can show efficiency on these two different sides of the ball. And one thing I wanted to look at was a new coach, right? So we've got Brian Harsin coming to Auburn from Boise State. And I think one of the best way to use this is what can we expect out of the Auburn offense with Harsin coming in? What's he good at? What does he like to do? And so walk me through this, Jerrick, in terms of what am I looking at when I say Brian Harsin, obviously a lot of Boise State years, and what's he done? What do you see when you're looking at this graph?
Yep. So what I see when I look at this is the red lines there, horizontal and vertical, will be your averages for the entire league. So you can see here most of his seasons have been above the average for his offensive passing EPA, and most of his seasons were above the rushing pass EPA as well. His most recent season, not very great at rushing when I look at that, but decent passing offense. It looks like.
And their best running back was injured, George Halani for 2020. So that could have something to do with it. He didn't play very much as a true freshman. Halani was their workhorse, and obviously we can see it was much better. But yeah, it looks to me like Boise was fairly balanced. They seem to, for most of the time that he was there, these are most of the years, are successful in both phases of the offense. Looks like, top right quadrant is going to be above the line in rushing and above the average in passing. So it looks like he's been fairly efficient in both phases of the offense most of the time in Boise State.
It would be interesting to look at Lane Kiffin as well, as we were just talking about.
Let's do it. That's the beauty of this app. You can just answer questions so quickly. Ole Miss in 2020 was good at both. FAU was much better at rushing in 2017.
He's coached at a few places.
Yeah. And we know, it looks like he's maybe improved his approach. These were the bad years where he was just not good really in a lot of different ways. And he's been more successful recently, both at Florida Atlantic and then in Ole Miss. So maybe he's, improved his play calling or something like that. And last year was pretty efficient on both sides.
Yep.
I guess one thing we could do too, and this is another beautiful thing that you have done, is we've got all these different categories. Not enough time to go through all of them, but we're looking at EPA, which is more of an efficiency. But rate is going to be a percentage of your play calls, right? So we can actually go say, I want to look at rush rate and pass rate. And this is interesting. Look, he used to pass a lot and not really won the ball. And looks like he's gotten, these last years, more balanced. Passing, actually running a little more than passing. Is that right? Rush rate 0.56 versus 0.44.
It would make sense from the neutral situation that we were looking at too.
So
which I wouldn't have thought just by
how
remembering
explosive they
the
were.
game. Yeah.
I think Harsin is a runner too. So going back to Brian Harsin at Auburn, so we can look at these rates, pass rate and rush rate. So actually,
these plotted against each other are going to be more of a straight line because they're very related to each other, basically directly related to each other.
I guess you're right. Yeah.
But yeah. you can see.
But I guess you could see he's consistently passed more than he's run,
Yes.
at least in recent history.
Yes.
He's
Sure.
been up over 50% passing last year. Yeah, I guess I just did that on the fly. But, these are some different things you can look at to see what kind of offenses a guy is going to bring to a new team or a new situation. And we only have head coaching data here, so we can't really look at OCs that much. Is that right?
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
We are limited by the data sometimes, but this is better
Yep.
than so many other things that you can get. Okay, and let's now go to what were we going to do? We're going to do Sark. He's a new coach coming from Alabama, which just had a historically amazing season on offense, right? I mean, they just blew everybody out of the water. We know the story, but you and I were going through some stuff here, and we were going to do EPA on offense and EPA on defense, right?
Yep.
And so it tells a pretty interesting story. We're going to plot Sarkisian's offense on the y-axis versus his defense on the x-axis. And it tells us an interesting story. What do you see here? Because I think everyone's expecting Sark to go to Texas and revitalize their offense in the same way he just dominated at Bama last year. He's known as an offensive guy, but this tells us a different story.
Right. What I'm seeing is, well, he had both a bad offense and a bad defense while at Washington for sure. It looks like he improved his offensive play over the years, and definitely when he was in Alabama, improved his offensive play. I don't know that's not going to say much about his defense. So maybe he'll have something like a good offense and a poor defense at there, which would be the hope.
That would be the hope for fantasy purposes. But when you guys are looking at this, offensive EPA, you want that to be very high because it means you have, you're adding expected points every time you run a play on offense. The inverse is true on defense, actually. A low number on defense is better because you are reducing your expected points every play that's run when you're on defense.
I definitely messed up my own graph there. That's awesome.
What do you mean?
Low defensive EPA per play is good, but I said he had a bad defense.
Oh yeah, no. The interesting thing is he had a pretty good defense at Washington, and frankly, a pretty good defense at USC. I mean, you want to be below this bar here, this vertical bar showing that you're below the average defensive EPA per play. That means you're good. That means your defense is limiting expected points added. So he built basically a good defensive team at Washington. And all of their offenses at Washington, at least, were below the average for offensive production. Obviously, we know at USC he had a better season. Yeah, the one season in our database in 2014. But I think this could throw a little bit of cold water on, okay, if he doesn't have Devontae Smith, Jalen Waddle, Najee Harris, the offensive line that we know is leaps and bounds better than any other team that Alabama is playing, and Mac Jones, 3 first-round picks on offense, an offensive line that can dominate anybody. And I may have had a first-round pick on the offensive line as well. I just don't know that history quite as well. But I think one of them was. If he doesn't have the talent that's leaps and bounds better than everybody else, is he going to... I don't know. This gives me a little pause to look at his history. And when he's coaching at Washington, he didn't have the talent advantage because it's Washington on all the teams he played, and it wasn't that impressive. And he wasn't super impressive in his NFL stop. I don't know. I think this gives me a little pause. Like, I was expecting to see a lot more fireworks looking at Sark's graph, and he hasn't been an offensive powerhouse historically. So, we liked this example. We thought it was interesting. But I want everyone who's watching this to use this and play around with it. We wanted to walk you through kind of what you're looking at, but, play around with it. If you're in the Discord, ask us questions. Jerrick's always in there. And we want to facilitate you to do some of your own stuff because everyone has, in our minds, I mean, I'm thinking of weird questions all the time where it's like, I want to jump in there and see this one thing. And if you have that too, you have the ability to do that now once this goes live, which should be very soon. We're recording before it's actually live. And then the final thing is a table, which is kind of another way of looking at the information. Again, Jerrick, correct me if I'm wrong, but you have all the same metrics that you do in the graphs if you would like to sort by any of these same things. One thing we picked here was S&P offense, S&P defense, which is a metric by Bill Connolly. He writes at ESPN, and you can look up what S&P means. But it's a way of looking at efficiency, basically. And so what we have here is always remember to check your filters. But 2018 to 2020, we've set that as the time frame. All teams in NCAA, and we've put the S&P offense as better than average. So around 30 is kind of average if we remember correctly, Jerrick. 54 is obviously the top. That's like the best. Mm-hmm. And then on defense, we wanted bad defenses, not good defenses. We were trying to answer a specific question. So we wanted defenses as, again, S&P lower is better for defense. Inverse is true for offense. So we wanted defenses that were higher than 27, all the way up to the worst defense would be 52. What we came up with, this group of coaches sorting, you can sort by any of these things you can sort. And so these are the best offenses paired with the worst defenses or worse than average defenses over the last couple years. So for fantasy purposes, it's one way to kind of identify what teams are blowing up on offense and then a sieve on defense, because that's going to just be fantasy goodness. Anything else? Sorry, I kind of took
Lane Kiffin showing up there again, which checks out.
Yes, Mike Leach. Lincoln Riley, we know. I mean, he's running quite the show over there at Oklahoma. Mike Gundy. And these are single years, though. And so you can see what year was this team, that perfect storm of offense and defense. And so you can, play around with it. Again, we just wanted to orient you to the different things you can do once this goes live. We're very excited about it. Anything you want to add, and we'll close up shop here so people can get in there and play around.
Nope. I think it's pretty. You covered it very well. I guess give out a little shout out to the NFL side of things. Kind of the inspiration for the neutral situation came from Ben Baldwin's app on Running Backs Don't Matter.
Yes, love that.
RBDMS.com. Fantastic site for the NFL side of things. Go to that. But yeah, that's what kind of where the inspiration came from, the neutral situation.
Yeah, and I think that's incredible. This is, for the past year or two, as I've been getting into deeper devy and then even C2C before we even started this website, but this is what I've been thinking. This is what this format needs. We need to be able to have the same tools, research, statistics, models as the NFL because we're flying blind. Mm-hmm. And so it's much nicer now. I mean, you are truly spearheading some of this that I mean, maybe it's behind some, I don't know, paywall somewhere, but, and it will be behind our slight paywall, but maybe some fancy, like $200 a month paywall. I don't know, but, I haven't seen it. I haven't seen this stuff. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I wanted to come on here and show people this is what we have. This is what you can do. And I mean, C2C.com, campus2canton.com continues to be a leader in, because of what you're doing, a leader in statistics, visualization of all this stuff, and something that nobody else has. So thank you so much, Jerrick, for putting this together, for brainstorming it. And I can't wait to dig in myself.
Loving working on this stuff. So it's a treat.
Yeah, it's a labor of love.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. Hope you enjoyed this, and reach out to us either on Twitter. You can see our handles here, or the Discord if you're a sub for campus2canton.com, and we will see you wherever we see you. All right, bye.
Bye.